You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. The Bronx. It's the only New York City borough that starts with the. It's also the home of the New York Yankees, home of hip-hop, the New York Botanical Gardens, and since 2011, the Bronx Documentary Center. The BDC is a nonprofit gallery and educational space founded by photojournalist Mike Camber. The BDC is a community-oriented cultural center that sponsors exhibit screenings and workshops. Their mission is to share documentary photography, film, and new media with Bronx communities and the cultural community at large. Our guests today are two Bronx-based photographers who coincidentally are members of the Bronx Documentary Center. Rhynna Santos was born in Hatorrey, Puerto Rico, and is a graduate of UCLA and a resident of the Bronx here in New York City. Ms. Santos' photographs depict everyday life, geographies, emotions, and the realities of people who live and work in the Bronx. Rhynna's photographs have been exhibited in Madrid in a number of New York City cultural venues, and recently she was featured in the New York Times Lens blog. Santos is the coordinator of the Bronx Junior Photo League. She's also the curator for the popular Instagram feed Everyday Bronx. Her current and perhaps most personal project has been documenting her relationship with her aging father, Grammy Award-winning Latin musician Rhynna Santos, for whom she has become a caretaker. Also joining us today is portrait, event, and street photographer Michael Young. Michael's photographs appeared most recently in The Corner, a pop-up group show at the Bronx Documentary Center, and Black Documents Freedom, an exhibit honoring renowned photographer Jamal Shabazz at the Andrew Friedman Home in the Bronx in 2017. His work has also appeared in Almost magazine. Welcome, Rhynna. Welcome, Michael. Pleasure to have you guys here.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. Let's start off with Rhynna, if we may, and ask a question here. Tell us a bit about your project, Papi el Maestro.
Well, Papi el Maestro is currently actually exhibited at the Bronx Music Heritage Center. Mm-hmm. And when I was approached by the director, Elena Martinez, she asked me, do you want to have an exhibition? And I wondered I was thinking, well, maybe I would give it to my group, the Bronx Women's Photo Collective, or maybe I would do something else with someone else. But because it was the Bronx Music Heritage Center that was a block away from where my dad grew up, I'm like, I think I'm going to show the work I've been doing on my dad for the past 6 years. It felt really right. And so basically, hashtag Papi el Maestro is my exhibition, my work, my love for my father through images. So I chose to be able to exhibit my dad, and because, we're always at the BDC, the Bronx Documentary Center, I wanted to try to do something a little bit, not just incorporating my documentary work on my dad, but to try to be a little bit more creative too in another way. So I decided to do 3 parts for this exhibition. Part 1 is how I got to know my dad when I was a kid. And that.
Did your father travel a lot as a musician?
My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
So they were very close, and my family was very close still. But that was challenging, getting to know who my father was when he wasn't in the home anymore. And also my father worked a lot through my childhood. And so he was always away on gigs or traveling or writing. I think when knowing a musician, once they start working, my father is not just a saxophone player, but a composer and an arranger. And when he was writing music, there was nothing else that existed but that piece of music. So I really grew up being very curious. Also, I was born in Puerto Rico. My parents, after they married, lived in New York for just a few years, but then they went back to the island. And so I wondered he was from New York, he's a New Yorican, and that was really interesting to me. Like, what was that? What did that mean? I just knew the island. So I really started to get to know my father, or a larger piece of who my father was, through these archival photos that I would find in my grandmother's house.
Now, you mentioned that you were approached after 6 years of working on this project. I'm assuming that this started off as your personal thing, that this was not, or maybe I'm wrong. Did you intend to have this go public to be about your father or be about this whole thing about caretaking, which is something we're going to talk about too?
Well, when I started photographing my dad, it really was an encouragement from once I started volunteering at the Bronx Documentary Center. And so many different photographers would come, like on Friday nights, we had Friday night classes, and they would say, if you want to practice, you got to photo, you got to use your camera, you got to photograph every day. But, why don't you photograph what you have access to? Mm-hmm. And I was...
What you know.
That's exactly,
that's right.
yes.
Yeah.
Man, I was living with my dad. I just had come back from Europe. So I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my life. So I just decided to start photographing him. I had done some interviewing with him before, and it was a really positive experience. When I did that, I got to know him a little bit more. So when I came back from Spain, I had lived there for 3 years, and I just came back. He was very different.
Okay.
And he was living alone at the time, and I just started to take it upon myself to, change things in his house and to help him out. I was going through the process of coming back from Europe and just getting used to the United States again. So I felt a little bit like an alien myself. So he and I wound up hanging out a lot. And I just saw that he needed some help. He needed some help with he's such a creative person. And so I started helping him organizing his gigs and driving him to his gigs and dealing with people at his gigs. So that's how I started to manage him.
Was he cooperative at the beginning of this idea of you documenting him and looking into creating a series of photos about him and interviews and such?
Anyone who has met my dad, in the industry, they call him the gentleman. So my dad was super cool about it. But
in Spanish, they call him el caballero, or what are they?
No, in English, they call him the gentleman.
Cool.
And he really is that. I mean, he really, really is that person. He is incredibly kind and gentle guy that I grew up with, who was super passionate about music. But I didn't really know that my dad was a famous person. Growing up, I was just like, we're not really rich, so
can't be famous then.
Yeah, we can't be famous. Like, I have to clean my own house. It sucks. Like, no way. There's no fame here. But as I started growing up and understanding my father a little bit more, but really understanding once we moved to the United States and to really, for the first time, be a minority. I grew up in my island, and so it was very, very different coming to the United States. My mom moved us all to California, to San Fernando Valley. And it was really hard being Puerto Rican in the West. And so our life really centered around music. My mother playing salsa because it felt like the only place we could really be Puerto Rican was in our house. And so we would play this. There was only one radio station for a few hours on the weekends playing salsa music called Alma del Barrio. And my mom would start screaming all the time. I was like, oh, that song is your dad. That's your dad's song. And I was like, really? Okay, I'm proud. But it didn't really make a connection until once I moved here. I went to high school here. And people would stop him on the street. And it just would really hit me like, who is this really super quiet guy who barely talks to me? He's a super introvert. And through starting to interview him, I stole my sister's camera, like her video camera. She still doesn't know.
We won't tell anybody. It's not a secret here. Don't worry about that.
Please don't tell. She'll hate me. But I started recording him. And through that, I really started to not just get to know him, but also hone, like asking the right questions. Right. I wanted a particular answer, and so I would ask the question differently and differently.
You learned how to connect.
Absolutely.
Did it evolve? I mean, it must have evolved over 6 years, but did it start perhaps, or at least maybe in his eyes, about a conversation about his musical career and his legacy and that, and then it became something different about a relationship between you two and your caretaking situation, or no? Is that
absolutely? At first, it really was just about his career and really focusing on his gigs and things like that. But once the care started to increase, of something as simple as preparing a meal to then helping him pick out his clothes and things like that, he started to see me differently. I think at first he was very flattered that I would have this kind of intense interest in his life and every story.
How many kids does he have?
He has 5 kids. I'm the youngest girl. But I have to tell you, my dad is a magnificent storyteller, super interesting. And egoless. And so you really sit in this, in a room with him, and we'll watch TV, and he'll tell me, something will come up on TV. He's like, oh yeah, did I ever tell you that when I met Dizzy Gillespie? And I'm like, no.
You're like, let me get the recorder of it.
Absolutely. And so, but now it's become, it's a joke all the time. It's like, okay, well, do you want to do this gig with me, or let's go out? It should be a great photo shoot opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, it would. It would be a great opportunity. But he's been super easygoing. But I've also been very strict with myself about having certain boundaries of things that I'm going to photograph with my father. I want him to feel comfortable. There was one image I took that I thought was really awesome of him pushing his walker, and he has to use a walker. And I thought the picture was great. I take him to Orchard Beach. We walk around in the Bronx, and he asked me to take it down. And that was the first and only time that he's ever done that. And he really didn't want people to see that. And I really understood, he's a public person. So, yes.
I was going to ask you, because again, I imagine even early on when you started to reconnect with your dad, he's putting a lot of his street cred and his pride out there. There's a certain persona that he built up and maintains, but he also had to surrender that to a little bit of, he had to humble himself to start looking at you saying, I do need help, or acknowledge the fact that, yeah, help me with this and stuff. Was that easy for him to do?
No, it was not. It was
not.
We actually had a conversation today, and this is one of the things that really encouraged me to open up about the caregiving that I do with my dad, to try to connect with other people that are going through it. That is something that it is incredibly challenging. As an artist, I looked at other projects of family members, like American families, and I couldn't relate to that type of storytelling. And I didn't really have a Puerto Rican or Latino project to really use as, inspiration. Yeah. So,
isn't there a certain universe, and not to knock that thought, but isn't there a kind of a universal meaning to caretaking? And we were talking before the show. I mean, my mom's 95, and my wife and I are essentially our primary caretakers. And it's something that is humbling in its own, but it's also something that's very strengthening, because you realize you get the bigger picture of what this is all about. Is there a big difference? And if so, how would you point to it, as far as you saying that of being a person of color, a minority in this country, compared to me, where I blend in? I'm Jewish and everything else. I'm also second generation here. What are the differences? What kind of challenges would you have specifically when it comes to, say, caretaking? It's things that, how would it go?
Well, the first thing I would challenge you to think about is, instead of using the word caretake, I would use the word caregive.
Thank you.
To be a caregiver. I think that also gives you a lot of agency, you and your wife, instead of taking something and there's this weird exchange. It's about really lovingly giving.
All points taken. Very valid. Thank you.
I know for me that helped me.
Yeah, no, that's important.
It gave me a different perspective on it, and also that it is a choice that we make. And once you accept a choice, you go through it very differently.
Oh yeah.
So those are the first things. But then, as I'm doing this project, even before I started going to the Bronx Documentary Center, I have loved images. I have loved taking pictures. I didn't have the language or the knowledge or the expertise before I went to the BDC, and the BDC became my elementary, high school, college, grad school, everything in one. And I will always be incredibly grateful for them, because at that point, I wasn't going to go to grad school for photography. I didn't even have that understanding that they gave me there and support. But as I've always considered myself, so I love a photo, so I've always been attached to photography. I've always had a camera of some sort, super cheap. But the connection, no, super cheap. I didn't, no judgments.
None whatsoever.
But so to me, when I look at art, I always look at it obviously through the lens of a woman of color, because of equipment and everything else, that I didn't have access to growing up. So I would see my father always through the lens of someone that had to capture it through photos, because I've had to capture my whole life through photos, like a journal. And I couldn't relate to other projects because culturally where I come from, I look at my mother and my father in a very respectful way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's certain things you don't, Puerto Rican families, there's certain things you don't share in public, certain things you don't talk about in public outside of your own family. And photography is about opening that and breaking that boundary between, participant and viewer. And so for me, that's what I really struggled with. So I couldn't never divorce myself from who I was and the subject that I was shooting. So has it gotten more difficult with my father? Absolutely, because he has aged. He's 90 years old. He turned 90 in December, thank God, and he's still incredibly sharp, working currently. An incredible holder of I Can't Express of Latin music history. He will read music encyclopedias, like books. And he will tell me, he's like, well, that person, that's the wrong caption because that's not that person, this musician. And also seeing, as a person of color, understanding the lack of means and connections to education and materials, also is how Latin music is really seen as low art. And so I also had that pressure, like, I really have to document this guy, really try to get, the right information, the history, because this is not just my history, but this is American history too. Latin music being so incredibly popular, late 40s, 50s, early 60s. It desegregated the dance halls in New York City in the 50s.
Made Paul Simon's reputation.
Absolutely.
And along with many others.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. My father has worked with so many different people that people would actually
I read his credit lines. He was awesome.
Yeah.
He's awesome. Yeah.
No, he is. And so it's been challenging to really walk that line of being a loving daughter, a daughter that also wants to develop her own photography career, regardless of what's happening in my personal life, but then also trying to elevate this person that I feel has been really ignored, this incredible creator and giver of talent, within the Puerto Rican Latino community. And then also to really try to pass on this pride about the Bronx too, because the Bronx, has also been the cradle of Latin music within New York City too. So many of the greats lived in the Bronx and met in the Bronx for a reason.
Do you think this may spill over to something bigger in that sense, into music and Latin music in the city, or who knows?
I really do hope so. I've been very much, because I feel as an older photographer myself, I started later in life in photography, not like, a lot of people start very young or go to, undergrad and grad. I think that I'm super open for this to really evolve into something new.
Was this your first long-term project?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to ask a bit about, you talked about the gear or the cheap camera. Who cares, right? None of us care about that stuff. But was there a kind of a process to get over the worry about the gear and what you were using and legitimizing the process because, I don't have a good camera or something like that? And then how did that evolve? And I see you shooting with the Fuji, which is kind of, in some ways, right now the camera of choice for street and documentary and things like that. So talk a little bit about that process too as you went along.
I think that's a great question. I think that's a great question to really talk about and a theme to talk about when it deals with of color photographers or, photographers that, don't have
access to,
absolutely.
To the money. I mean,
and that is real.
That's what it is. Yeah.
When I would meet all these different photographers and again, being at the BDC, so blessed to have these amazing famous people walk through the door every Friday. You're just like, oh my, and there would be 10 people in the room. So you can ask all the questions you wanted. But one of the questions always would be is like about access. Where did you get your, not necessarily about, what camera you're using, but how can we create art if we don't have that $10,000 camera, and it became this personal and political point for me. And it really informed me as I continued, and this is why I do the Instagram feed. I'm the founder of Everyday Bronx and part of the Everyday Projects group. And because it is about creating images through your phone. I mean, obviously now things have changed since Instagram started, but I'm such a huge proponent of access. Everyone should be able to express themselves through photography if they choose so. So I don't, and so when I talk and I, do talks with kids and things like that or other adults, I always try to bring this up about access. For me, it was hard because I did walk in believing I have to get, the top camera. There are some projects. I mean, what look do you want to have?
Yeah.
What do you want to say? So,
There's some reality in that,
it's a
absolutely.
real thing.
But there's also a bottom line, though. I think that once you understand photography is the camera is not the critical aspect. It's your eyes. If you're a photographer and you know what you're doing, you could just take a box with a pinhole in it, and you can go out, and within those limitations,
Absolutely.
take a
But you
good
got to get
photograph.
there. I mean,
But you
sometimes-
have
But you have to get there.
But you
once
have to get there to
But
get
once
the
you get there,
conversation.
you realize that you don't need that
Absolutely.
$10,000 camera. You don't.
And also
Exactly.
that lack of access makes a difference. Then it really does inform who is actually taking photos now and who is not. And so that's a good thing to talk about as well, to be able to, how can we usher more, people of color so we can tell more well-rounded stories. And also to me, just even not even wanting to be, even if you don't want to be a professional photographer, again, talking about, how, if you're poor, you don't have the privilege of exercising your creativity, and that is painful. And I think that is something that we need to talk about as well. I don't teach photography or, to try to push everyone into becoming a photojournalist, but it is so much so about giving people the knowledge and belief that they can express themselves. And I think it's important, especially, among a community of color.
On the flip side, I'm sorry to cut you off, but a flip side to this conversation is that in a series like you're doing with your dad or any other kind of intimate thing, you may not want that big camera. You don't want that big loud clunker. You want something that's not going to get
Something
in his
that's more
face.
transparent.
It's a great point because the reason that the exhibition is called #Papi el Maestro is because I started it on my
Instagram,
phone.
right.
So
Talk a little bit about did you, and I think Alan touched on this, did you ever think you were going to be having this in the New York Times, exhibiting it even? Did it start as something just to kind of work it through your own system and see where it goes as a project? And you mentioned the BDC and how it began, but what did you think about it when you first started?
I also thought besides, just practicing my photography and documenting this, famous, important man, I just thought it would be important for our families. I grew up, I only had 2 photos of myself when we moved from Puerto Rico to the United States. So to me, also printed images are a big deal because I didn't grow up with any, and we were so poor when we got to the United States. We didn't have a camera for a really long time. So there are huge chunks of my life that are not documented at all. So I'm obsessed with that because I didn't have that,
We had,
in my life.
Ziza Cruz Bacani on our show said something very similar. Yeah.
And it's meaningful and it does reflect because also I have been privileged enough to travel the world. I've lived, in Spain. And, I love art. I love going to museums. And the thing is, my experience has always been, I barely ever see people that look like me in frames, in photographs, you know. And for me, it's like, wait a minute, I want to try to create images that I want to look at. When you find something that is missing, then do it yourself. I mean, that's how come my series, Fandom, Size, and the Force, I went to Star Wars convention in Anaheim, California, and I decided to photograph plus-size women, Star Wars fans, at the Star Wars convention. It's super, super unique. And, I felt really weird telling, my friends at the BDC that I was going to do it. But it became one of the most transformative experiences I have ever had in my entire life because I had always hoped, looked for, and dreamt to see those photos because, 1, they're female fans, and 2, plus size people do exist and we have, respect. And so I've been photographing I'm going to go to the Star Wars convention in 2 weeks. So I'm going to meet some people that I photographed through 3 conventions and to really chronicle the difference in how it's a movie, but how this movie and the changes in the movies of inclusion of other people of color has changed fandom and how, as people of color, we also change a space because we are there. If you go there are about 50,000 people, and it's people from all over the world, unlike what you would see in some of the fandom world, which is just it looks like white men. Like, that's not really true.
Well,
That's a great point. Yeah, I wanted to get back to maybe two questions regarding the Papi El Maestro, but you said he asked you to take out a photo. Was there a decision that you had to make, or was it just a no-brainer?
No, it was an absolutely no-brainer.
Okay.
I think at the end of the day, I edit myself even before I photograph, or I did heavily. I think that now, since the exhibition, I've gotten such positive reaction from the images that I'm showing a lot of other photos. Again, still trying to be very respectful to my father and his wishes. But no, I mean, it was a no-brainer that I would remove that image that he didn't feel comfortable
there
with.
is a photograph that I saw of him with a walker, isn't there? Or am I mistaken that?
No, I'm not in the show. Not in the show.
But in the New York Times article, perhaps?
Yes.
At a cemetery. Am I right
Yes,
or wrong? Yeah,
that's the only one. That's the only one.
All right,
yeah.
but he was okay about that, or is that where you started to get
He
a little bit
allowed
of...
that one?
He was okay with that.
I love
I
that
think
shot
that
so much.
I think he's had to relent too a little bit.
Papi's the New York Times.
Come on, yeah. It's your favorite newspaper. Come
That's
on.
it.
Right.
That's
know?
right.
Come
It was
on.
a
He was
give or
at-
take, right?
At the grave of his parents. So
That's
there's-
right.
I mean, it was a great photograph. It's a lot of very powerful. By the way, I also want to just go back to one thing you're talking about. In the Bronx, people do not have the means. Having the time to be creative is a luxury, and then having the tools is something that is not easy to get a hold of. And I've referred to this so many times, but one of my teachers in high school said something that I'll never forget. And it was about creativity. And we were given an assignment, and there were all kinds of things. It has to do this, has to do that, and all these parameters, and everyone's bitching and moaning about it. And he said something that will never leave me. He goes, you have to understand something. I'm giving you these limitations because you need a starting point, because once you know what you cannot do, everything else is possible. You start with your limitations. That's your starting point. So if all you have is this $20 camera and a 12 exposure roll of film, then that's your starting point. You go out and you take 12 damn good pictures to the best of your ability at that point in time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a question that I get asked quite often in terms of gear. Like, what do you use? How do you take the images that you take? I think I started out like with a Pentax. But the thing was, I had to come full circle. I got that camera. I shot with it. I love the images that it produced. And it challenged me in terms of its limitations when I didn't know its limitations.
Yeah.
And it forced me just to be able to use the equipment that I had. I had a 50 millimeter lens, and I think I had a kit lens, 18 to 55 kit lens. And I just kind of took off with that camera. For me, I started shooting... my wife got me a one-day workshop to learn about manual photography. And after that, I think things just like the whole world just changed to me. And I started wanting to get the light, the flash, the pop-up flash. I wanted the light off the camera, and I started moving that light around. And man, I can't even tell you what happened in terms of it was really transformative for my life in terms of just being able to take this camera and just create these different type of mood and just like sculpt light. And in the beginning it was difficult to learn, but I used YouTube and I was on Flickr. I was like one of the earlier people on Flickr. This is before Instagram. And again, it was always a thing where I was finally able to upgrade and get a Canon 5D Mark III, like I think the year that it came out. But the crazy thing was, after I started shooting with the Canon, I loved the images, loved being able to shoot full frame, and it gives a different look and a feel.
But it didn't make you more creative.
No.
Or it didn't make you a better photographer, right?
It never makes you a better photographer.
That's right.
If you can't take decent images, even with a cell phone, then, it really comes down to your creativity, your eye. And the thing that I love about photography that I carry with me is I don't have to be in competition with anyone but myself. Everyone has such a unique perspective and vision that it can't be reproduced. 10 people can be in the same room taking 10 different pictures of the same subject, but it always comes out different. So it never ceases to amaze me. And that's kind of what I use when I talk to people about not getting hung up on gear. I started out a little hung up. It wasn't, I think, until I upgraded and got the camera that I wanted and got the lenses. I look at the camera body is really the camera. Each camera with its limitations causes you to think differently and approach your subject differently. So one of the things that happens to me is like if today I'm just going to be using my phone, or today I'm just going to be using my Ricoh, my mind is like focused on its plus and its minuses, and I'm going to push it
within its parameters.
Right, within the parameters, and it's always trying to shoot within those parameters with whatever gear I have. Helps me not to like obsess over getting a 5D Mark IV, which I'd like to get, and I'd like to get the Fuji GX. I'd love to shoot medium format, but I'm actually shooting with a Rolly as well through the BDC, and I'm shooting film, and I'm shooting 120 film and shooting medium format, and my God, I love it. I love it so much. I love the aesthetic of it. And I'm hoping at some point to incorporate that into like my street fashion going forward. And just being able to have that tactile feeling where you're taking the image, you're developing it, and you're in the dark room, and the image appears in the chemicals, and it's just such an amazing thing. It's such an amazing process.
Your work, I came to know you through the street photography, mostly the black and white stuff, but you got all kinds of work out there. And, the commercial work you're doing, and
landscape,
and the color work. When let's say you wake up on a Tuesday, I mean,
how does it work?
How you decide today's a color day?
Is it eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
Yeah. So initially my inspiration, I have an encyclopedia of inspiration. So it begins.
Can I borrow that?
Yeah. So it begins with my aunt, who was the family documentarian.
We all got one family,
right? We always have that member, right?
Uncle Jerry in my house.
Okay, all right. Well, it's Auntie Tell. It's really Aunt Ellen, but when we were kids, we couldn't pronounce Ellen, so we came up with Auntie Tell, and it kind of stuck, and it's never changed.
That's
right?
Yeah.
So Auntie Tell used to take all the pictures, and in the square frame, she used to put all of the captions and the information. And it filled the albums. And I remember as a kid always loving, that I could always see the milestones in our family history in those albums. And she even created albums for each one of us. She was really, really good at documenting things.
Do you think we're going to be passing hard drives down to our grandkids with folders?
That's how it's looking right about now.
Yeah, I know, and it's scary because I don't know how many kids are going to be able to crack those things open.
Right.
I know.
And if they crash, it's all gone.
A whole other topic.
But she was really amazing with that. And so it inspired me in my early 20s just, to have a point and shoot, to document as many things as I could. Usually it was just the milestones, or if we traveled, the basic snapshots that's what I refer them to as being like just snapshots and family memories. But it wasn't until later on that I think around the time that I was dating my wife, her family, her mother's brother worked at Pentex and gave them a 35 millimeter film camera. And I'd always loved the movies, cinema. It was like a big thing for me. I was a performing arts major in high school with hopes and aspirations of acting. I did some off-Broadway and some extra work.
Hey, you'd be on a microphone right now.
Well, there you go. There you go. I'm back in it. Back in the saddle. Right. But so although back then, I used to like a lot of Night of the Hunter. I like that black and white aesthetic. I like a lot of noir, some of the 40s movies. So those things kind of stuck with me, and they stayed in my head. And when I finally started shooting and started deciding that I wanted to do like street photography for me was like a crazy evolution. It's like I started just taking pictures of street signs. And then I was living in the Bronx when I really started getting serious about shooting, and the graffiti I always loved since I was a kid. I miss seeing it on the trains, but now you just see it on walls and on murals. And so I used to go around and photograph that. And then I started thinking like, well, I think it would be a little more interesting if I had something in the frame, some kind of human element. So I started doing that. And it started just to evolve from color, the signs, the graphic, the textures, all of those different things started evolving, and I started messing around with filters. If I shot with my phone, or if whenever I was shooting with the Pentax, I would, I put it through Silver Effects Pro, I saw all these different presets, and it just tripped me out how different things looked when you took the color away, when you remove color.
Can I ask you jump in here real quick? Because my evolution it sounds kind of similar, in terms of starting in the street and what you see around, graffiti, signs, whatnot. How was it when you did start to incorporate people? Was it tricky? Was it hard? And maybe you can talk about some of your techniques. I mean, do you speak with people when you shoot them, or you tend to shoot on the sly? Yeah. So probably a little bit both, but talk about how that was. And it's hard for people to make that break, start and shoot people, strangers, of course.
Yeah, that's another question that I get often. Like, do you approach people? How do you deal with the human element? And I think it evolved just like it did with the signs and the graphic. I started incorporating people into it, and then I would actually go on YouTube and I would look at like Eric Kim, or I would look at I'm trying to think of, the names are starting to elude me at the moment, but I would look at like Gary Winograd, and I would look at Bresson, and I would look at all of these different people's work, and I would try to see if there was a way that I could incorporate people without being seen. I wanted to be as not present as possible. But then there would be someone with such amazing look that I have to ask them for a photo. Yeah. So just like the question you asked, like what's it going to be Tuesday? Are you going to do landscape? Are you going to do portraits? What are you going to do? Man, it's like wherever my eye takes me, and it's really more than my eye, it's wherever the light takes me, Yeah.
One of the reasons I love Mike's work so much, I met him, we were both started out as volunteers at the Bronx Documentary Center. One, just meeting other Bronxites that love to photograph the Bronx, because when you're doing it, as a photographer, you're out alone. It's, you're by yourself. And so, of course, you think like, well, maybe, I'm the only person taking photos of the Bronx. But to be in a room full of people that, are interested in the Bronx as well, or that love photography was, life-changing for me. Yeah. But I just love his point of view of the Bronx. I think you can really see, even though he wasn't born in the Bronx.
Right, thank you. They keep reminding me of that. Yeah.
I just had to say it.
I know.
People would comment about it.
Yeah.
But there's such love that you have for the Bronx, and you can see it through your images. Also, he's an incredibly humble guy, and I think he is such an fantastic talent. And you are so diverse with what you do with your photography. But
the feeling is mutual.
I love looking at your Instagram.
And I love looking at yours too.
You're featured on Everyday Bronx a lot.
Yes, yeah.
Talk a little bit about the Claremont Village project.
Okay, so the Claremont Documentary Project explores diverse lives and stories of the residents of the Claremont Village, which is a New York Housing Authority public housing development located in the Morsania section of the South Bronx. So through photographs, oral history, film, and multimedia, Rhynna, myself, and a group of other photographers are going to be exploring a range of political and economic issues such as lead contamination, food security, access to healthcare, infrastructure, and policing. We also will follow the lives of everyday families, collect oral histories from the houses of the oldest residents, and chronicle the West African community that's there. The first year of the project was from 2017 to 2018. It was photographed by the Bronx Photo League. and their work resulted in the festival that you attended, which was Claremont Illuminated.
Right.
Yeah, it was a 2-day outdoor photography festival that happened at Claremont Village. In the project's second year, there are myself and Rhynna and 10 other photographers. What we hope to do is bring a wide range of experience to storytelling there. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we hope to do. We hope to explore all these different topics. I have a project that I'm working on called Generations because of my personal experience growing up in the projects. And the thing with the projects is it's had a negative stigma attached to it. It doesn't matter what borough or what state a project development, a housing project is in. It generally has a negative connotation to it. And so growing up there, I saw the humanity of everyone who lived there. But I know that when I was young, I kind of wanted to get out of the projects. I remember around the time that I turned 19 or 20, I got married just so I could get out. I could get. I wanted to get out or get out of my mom's house.
Is like how do I say this? That idea of wanting to get out is kind of like baked into to growing up there. I mean,
it could be.
It could be, of course. I mean, everyone's different. I get that, but
right.
I mean, it seems to be such a part and parcel of it, and that needs to change, right? I mean,
exactly.
Is that kind of what we're talking about?
And so one of the things with my project, it explores the way people see or are perceived who live in the housing projects. It's not just I'm doing it for the people who are there who need to be highlighted. Even today I had an interview with a woman who is just amazing with the amount of work that she's done as an educator. She lives there. She's taking care of her family there. And there are so many gems that live in the environment. Like, we all have so much to contribute to humanity, but sometimes we are separated by socioeconomic issues, different things, class structure, the color of our skin, and we add so much value to each other if we could just remove those things. However, we live in this world, and what we try to do is we're trying to shine a light on people who really need to be highlighted in terms of what they've contributed.
I want to jump back to this question. Will you go forward with your father's project with Papel Maestro? Is it over? And if it is, how did you realize it was over? And the second half of this question is, did it ultimately end up becoming kind of a self-portrait?
So the work will continue to go on. I photograph my dad all the times. But now, because I've been able to do the exhibition, I think I am beginning to take photos that I wasn't taking before. It's moving more from documentary photography, to trying to really play and be as artistic as possible. It's allowed me to really fit into this role of caregiver, because some of the images, that are in the show for me are very difficult to look at. And they just show me not just the state of, my dad, who's older, and everything that means to a daughter, who always desperately wanted to know this person, who admires this person. There's nothing like having a father that you admire. It is such a gift for a child to have that. And I feel so blessed to have had that my whole life. But then also to look at him and to look at the process as a photographer, like to really embrace that. And it's been a long journey to really call myself that and to express myself in that kind of way. And lastly, I would love for this conversation to go on when it comes to other caregivers, because it is an incredibly difficult position to be in. And I want to be able to, if I can inspire someone to pick up a camera, to look at a loved one or another person, to want to understand, to see, how important it is to look, the looking. It makes you a stronger person.
On that note, we're going to take a short break and come back with more with Mike and Rhynna. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, hashtag BHPhotoPodcast.
Okay, we are back. John, you had a couple of questions. Why don't you jump right into it?
Okay, well, thank you. Alan mentioned at the beginning of the show the Bronx Documentary Center was started by Michael Camber in 2011. There's this beautiful house that serves as a gallery and workshop space and I guess offices as well. But in my experience, the doors are open. It's like a community center. People can just come in. Now, are you guys within walking distance? Do you guys kind of find this as part of your day-to-day life? And talk about your experiences there and how you came to be part of it. And now you're on staff to some degree, right? I mean,
Yes.
or you are on staff. So,
yes,
yeah.
yes, I have 2 jobs there now.
Okay, cool.
But when I first found out about the BDC, I was at my first exhibition in New York City. Someone brought up the BDC, and I had never heard of it. I looked it up that night, wrote Mike the next day, and he said, come on Friday, which was the following day. And I was at the BDC on Friday.
What year was this then?
This was 2013.
Okay.
Fall 2013, and I've been there ever since. But for me, I live about maybe 12, 13 minutes driving from the Bronx Documentary Center, and I can't express to you the privilege of having an art place about photography where you live. I've never experienced that in the Bronx before. I mean, obviously we have the Bronx Museum and other art spaces, but something specifically for photography. And when I walked up, it was this beautiful building and it has these glass walls.
It's a historic building, if I'm not mistaken,
It is.
right?
It
Part
is.
of the preservation, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's I think it used to be many, many things, like a Dutch bar or
Really? You
meeting
know more than I
place
do. Really?
and
Wow.
a candy store. It was abandoned before Mike got it.
Yeah.
It was a blockbuster video. No, no.
But just impressive just to have, again, in the South, and this is in the South, the real South Bronx.
real South Bronx.
Actually in the real South Bronx. And so just walking up, it was just really taken by the fact of it being such a beautiful place. And sadly, you don't see that type of investment from people from the outside of the Bronx to make in the borough. So I felt from jump that this was a special place. But then walking in and talking to other photographers, finding out that there are other Bronx photographers, I was shocked because, again, photography is such a solitary thing. And but it is so important to have a space where you live. I always had to get on the 6 to go and see anything about photography or or other art forms. And so, I never lived that privilege that I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive, 12 minutes and I'm going to be there. That to me, and it sounds like nothing, but it really changed my life because it allowed me to actually be a huge part of this place.
And it's, in a sense, it's yours. I mean, you can take ownership of something that's right there.
absolutely
Yeah,
right. And that makes a difference.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael?
So my experience is similar in the same year Rhynna and I came to the BDC at 2013. But my experience was, okay, I moved from Soundview section of the Bronx over to the Melrose section of the Bronx. And this is where I'm starting to develop my love for photography. I lost a friend whose wife sold me his camera equipment. And my wife gets me this manual workshop, and now I am like on a mission. I'm working 25 years in finance, and suddenly the only thing, and I hated it. I hated every day of it, being stuck in a cubicle. And the only thing that seemed to really speak to me and really like lift my spirit was taking images. So my wife, who was a huge inspiration in my portrait photography, because she was the person that I really started photographing. Her and my daughter, and you're right, and she became my muse and still is. She was walking through the area and she saw the BDC. Now she knew that since I was starting to like really start putting a portfolio together, like, well, maybe this is a spot, Mike, that you could go to. Maybe you should talk to them about maybe doing like having a show there, because she didn't know what it was. And I stopped over and I spoke with Mike, And, he told me, send me a couple of shots and come to our Friday night class. And I was like, it's not really a gallery space like that, honey. But, it seems like a really cool environment to hang out, and there'll be other photographers there. They talk about that they have this class on Friday and they critique your work. And so I stopped in, and that was kind of it for me. I would go on the Friday nights and be so inspired by not just the amazing photographers that I met that shot in the Bronx, but also the different talents that they would bring in to speak with us and kind of educate us. And I knew something special was going on, because every time I sat there and they put images up on the projector, there would be like moans and sighs coming out of me that I wasn't aware that I was making because of the imagery that I was seeing. The power of the image, exactly. And it was so incredibly inspiring and encouraging to me, to what I was doing, and I just wanted to be a part of it any way I could. So I've volunteered a couple of times for a few events, and now I'm a part of the Claremont Fellowship.
Has the association changed your work a little bit? Have you seen
it changed my life. My very first exhibition ever was at the BDC, Bronx by Bronx. And Rhynna was in that show, and there was how many of us? Like 20 of us, where our work was exhibited, and it had a really great reception. And for me, it was like really amazing, because it was, how did I end up here? How did this end up happening? And I know that since the 2013, like the reputation of that place has only grown with everything that's been going on there, and all the work that they're doing in the community, especially with the work that they're doing with children, exposing them, especially in an underserved area. They're exposing them to the arts. They're exposing them to photography. They're broadening their horizons and giving them other opportunities. And I love just the hands-on approach that the BDC takes, and how they teach the kids the essentials. They teach them film photography. They take it back to the core.
Yeah, Mike is talking about the after-school educational program at the Bronx Documentary called the Bronx Junior Photo League, and it's expanded now to, we have 60 students. And one of my jobs there is that I'm the college counselor, college success for the Bronx Junior Photo League, and I help and I counsel seniors, juniors, and the rest of the kids to talk about college. Also, we, talk about the application process, getting into college and succeeding in graduation. And I think that is an example, that college success is an example of how thoughtful the Bronx Documentary really is, and about the success of people. And this happens to be for young people. We also, being involved with the Bronx Photo League, which is the adult program. We're taking a little break right now, but once we're able to get going again on it, it changed the lives of, the people that are now my friends, that I've been able to be featured in the New York Times, being able to meet other photographers, and to really just give an opportunity, one, education, and to, support and help to be able to move forward in a career of photojournalism. And then evolving also into the Bronx Senior Photo League. And that leads into my second job at the Bronx Documentary Center, which is I teach older adult digital photography. And so we just expanded the program literally weeks ago into 2 other centers. So now we're at 3 centers. And then, so I've been able to really literally see the different age groups, from teenagers to adults to older adults. And what I have seen similar, in all these groups, is this desire to learn and to grow and evolve. And if you really do quality work, quality educational work, you will get that back. And that's what I love about the BDC. The BDC also runs, it's a group of people because of the incredibly dedicated staff. People are attracted to go there because they themselves have very similar philosophies about community, about work, and also about art. And so I love that about the Bronx Documentary Center. But I started as just a volunteer, and now
Do you get the connection between everything you just said and our original conversation when it came to your project about your father? It's all about caregiving. Everything you're talking about here is about giving.
And what you get when you give.
Yes, yes. But you talk more about giving than taking and getting.
And this is why I really wanted to develop my photography career in the Bronx with other people of color. I was, lucky enough to go to UCLA for undergraduate studies. And again, being a minority there too. And I just didn't want, because this was now my choice. I could do whatever I want, but now I wanted to really try, my hand at photography. But I wanted specifically, it was a choice that I wanted to develop this art form surrounded by other people of color, and for them to be my subjects as well. And this group of people at the BDC want to give. I mean, it's an incredibly challenging job. You are working all the time. It's not just, dealing with the educational program, but also, the ongoing exhibitions, documentaries, talks, book launches, community, we have
the block party.
The block party, the first, Latino photo festival in New York City.
That's right.
That's going to be an annual thing. And just also being at the forefront of really thinking, how can we do gallery work differently?
Right.
And we have amazing people
and
that do that.
How does it start? Is that just someone who wants to join? Is there a membership with a small dues? I mean, I'm assuming
No, it's great that you brought that up. We do have memberships for, to be able, everything is free for Bronx residents. But if you don't happen to live in the Bronx, there are small fees.
You're not lucky enough to live in the
That's
Bronx.
right.
That's right.
There's small fees for different events that we do have, and so the membership gives you a lot of access, and also there's a lot of swag and gear that goes with that too.
Right.
Get some of that swag.
And outside of some of the things that we have that run, on a weekly basis, we also have special workshops.
They give a lot of access to where someone who is going to ICP, they would have to pay a large sums of money for the access that the BDC provides, mostly for free. And if it's not completely free, it's at a very discounted rate.
Absolutely. I mean, to have that two weekend book workshop for the price that it was, I mean, it's just,
that's incredible.
It was incredible. But then if people are interested, we also really desperately need volunteers.
Right.
And so that's another way to really get involved and to be able to really give back. And also just being around other photographers. I think that's elevates your work as well.
Yeah, it's always been an elevation to me to be able to get feedback and to be able to sit and see other people's work and just be inspired by that and also be an inspiration to other people and to be a mentor to other people, to be able to talk to other people about sharing our philosophies and our techniques on how we achieve certain things.
Yeah, and this, going back to the question that you asked, what the difference, about the caregiving, and this is exactly why the Bronx Documentary Center, being in the Bronx, elevates it and makes it unique, because it is around people that have grown up without that. And there's a level of appreciation, and then also a deep understanding of really needing to pass that on, because the cycle needs to continue, and hopefully be able to really usher younger people and older adults into creating. It's like, there's an artist inside of you too.
That's
and maybe
right.
you didn't have the time for it now, but you can do it now.
Let me ask you real quickly, is the part of the mission of the BDC to document the Bronx necessarily? Or, are there photographers there who are working on projects that have nothing to do with the Bronx? They're just using it as kind of their base?
No, absolutely. No, we have photographers that covering, different, things that are happening in different countries, different states, Manhattan, everywhere.
Where's that now?
What? I don't know.
You mean downstate Bronx?
Exactly. But I think it's so we have photographers that are working on a lot of different things, not just in the Bronx, but there is a need, specifically in the South Bronx, to fill a need for people that without a place like that wouldn't have that level of access. I took last year my Bronx Senior Photo League class to the Met, which is a museum that people from all over the world come and see. It's an icon to New York City.
And they've never been there.
They
right?
had never
been there.
All of them
Wow.
had never been to the Met. And also it's a large eye-opening thing about what are our institutions really doing to outreach to other New Yorkers.
Good point.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what type of, because some of these institutions are incredibly expensive to get into. Again, who gets to look at art? Who gets to appreciate art? Who gets to be surrounded by that beauty? And so it was a big deal for us to go. And I told him, this is a political thing. We're going to this place because this place, you belong here. And you're going to change that place just by being there. And telling that to older adults, they were on fire and they loved it.
That's awesome.
They loved it. Even the ones that had a difficult time getting around, moving, having physical limitations.
Well, just think, if part of the goal is to have the stories of the Bronx told, just think in 10 years or 15 years when the first generation of kids that started it or came through the BDC are out there telling their own stories. It's just going to grow.
That's going to be something. That's going to
be
be something to see.
Yeah.
No, and it's really important also as, with kids, adults. I am a direct, I benefited from the education. It made me feel differently. It gave me, a beginning to a career that I deep down didn't think was possible, to older adults and changing them. I have, older adults that have changed their whole weekly schedule just to be in my class, because when you teach someone to think critically and to look at themselves with pride, it just trickles and it filters into everything else. So I think it is important. They don't have to be professional photographers, but they'll look at the world differently and themselves in that world.
His name came up earlier, Jamel Shabazz. So, and I heard you say he was a mentor. I know for you. So, can you guys just talk a little bit about his influence, the role he's played, the status he has now in New York City photographers, and anything else you want to comment about him?
I don't know. You want to go first? I don't know.
I would love to go first.
All right.
There are no words that I have that could describe the power and influence and support of this man. I love social media because I actually got a hold of him on his website and I wrote, I want to get into photography. This is before I went to the Bronx Documentary Center. I don't know how to do it. And actually, I met him at his favorite printer. He was printing some images and we sat, in this place. And he spoke to me for 2.5 hours and he was so kind. And this is the first real photographer that I ever met. I remember as a teenager going to a museum, going to El Museo del Barrio, and I saw his work and I had never in my life had seen a photo book with people that looked like me before. And, and with a Puerto Rican flag. And it shook me. I couldn't afford the book, so I couldn't buy it. But I remember that. And I remember calling my best friend. It's like, I just saw this book and I just can't believe it. I've never seen this work before. I've never seen these images. And it changed me. And to be sitting in a room with him and he encouraged me to apply for this contest. And I was chosen. And I was chosen with a photo that I took on the way to go see him.
Oh, wow.
And
that's crazy.
And out of respect, I applied just because he told me to. So of course I had to. And that's the first time that was ever featured in a gallery. And it was an image that I took and on my phone, on my cell phone.
Yeah.
So,
Michael, anything you want?
So I don't even know where to start with Jamel. He's been a mentor to me. He's been a friend. He's an iconic photographer, but he's such a gentle and humble. He has such a gentle and humble spirit. Now, my first actual meeting with Jamel was I was told by Laura James. She kind of put that show together at the Andrew Freeman for Black Documents. That we were in the show with Jamel Shabazz, and I was like, oh my gosh, I seen this man's work. This man's work is incredible. As a matter of fact, some of my street fashion is modeled after Scott Schulman, the sartorialist, Bill Cunningham, and Jamel Shabazz. So I was blown away when I was told that I was going to be in a show alongside the work of Jamel Shabazz. He reached out to me on social media started commenting on my work. I was blown away. I mean, I could not believe it. And he had been such a I don't know any of the words to say, but besides mentor, and he's been such an encouragement to me. For someone who's an amazing talent like that, to be that humble and be that giving of himself, it's just extraordinary. And he's just been, again, like such an influence in terms of what I'm doing now and how I'm shooting.
I also think his influence is only growing. I mean, he's
and it's really important to really see, you know, the history that he covered that no one else.
Absolutely.
Historically, his work is incredibly important, you know, and how people just his connection with his subject, with the participants in the images. You could just see, you know, for someone to look at the camera in that kind of way, there had to be this incredible special connection. And so for him working with, you know, the current, you know, photographers and future photographers and be that giving, but just his work in general, I think for him to see beauty when other people weren't seeing beauty there, that is genius.
Exactly. And he made an entire generation, be looked at or be seen in such a beautiful way, in such a respectful way, and in such a proud way, at a time like the time before crack, which is one of his books, and just the style and the manner in which he presented his work and how he presented people. And there's like the thing that people don't know is when you look at Jamel's images, you don't know. You can put a story together. You can get an emotional connection because of the way he makes his connection with his subject. But there's so many stories. I actually had the privilege of going out to his house and sitting down and talking with him again. We talked for hours about his process, about his work, and about even the things that haven't even been seen yet, that he has right now that he's working on and stuff.
He was on a part of a series we did through B&H with the photographer Corey Rice. Matter of fact, his portrait is on the site right now.
Okay.
And what is photography? And we asked him, we talked a little bit, and his answer was, it's visual medicine.
Right.
And it's about the best answer you'd ever want to hear, right? Yeah. And I echo everything you said. I don't know him too well, but everything you said.
Is it for him or for the viewer?
I think for both.
Right.
And I don't say that as a joke either. I don't.
No, and Jamel would say that it would be for both. Because there's years of different things that was going on with him emotionally that he pours out into his photography. And some of the people that he's photographed will come back to him years later saying, oh my gosh, that's the only picture of my father that I've ever seen. You know, when you can do that with this medium and be able to, you know, my hope at some point is to be able to make those types of connections. And it's just great to be around a mentor like him because he's kind of like, he has me thinking in so many different ways in terms of how I can take a different approach to how I do what I do. And you know, I'm forever grateful for knowing him.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Something I'm curious about. Again, I'm from Brooklyn, and I spent my first years in the Nostrand housing projects, Avenue V and Knapp Street. And then my father got enough raises, we were able to move into the co-ops 3 blocks away. We still all went to the same schools, didn't make it, had the same friends and everything else. Brooklyn has a reputation and a personality, as does the Bronx. No two ways about it. They're one and the same in many, many ways. How is the Bronx different from Brooklyn and other urban areas comparable to that? And there are other places that we could easily just peel back a few layers and drop it back down, and it's the Bronx. But how's the Bronx differ? How's it special?
Well, the Bronx is incredibly special for, you know, some of the things that you had mentioned, you know, earlier when you started the podcast. I mean, Bronx is the birthplace of hip hop. And everywhere that I have traveled to, everyone's listening to hip hop today still. So this is, you know, this American music form that was created here out of nothing by, you know, Puerto Ricans and African Americans. And we don't get everybody loves to talk about hip hop, but the South Bronx doesn't get any credit for really being the cradle of that art form.
They never think,
They
Mom.
don't get the street cred,
No,
right?
but in a way, it makes it different. And it's different because one, it is such a negatively stereotyped place. Wherever I've been, when people ask me where are you from, I say the Bronx, and I could be in a village in Norway or in a small town in Italy or in, Colombia, and everyone responds the same way. And that really informed me about how this horrific pressure that people that live and are from the Bronx have to live every day. When I was there in high school, my high school girlfriends would tell me about, the Bronx, and I would always be super positive about things. And they were just like, things here are, I got to figure out that because of how other people thought about the Bronx, what a weight it was on people, what a negative weight it was.
It was a movie, Fort Apache, about, that's a whole other topic.
No, and that's what I was going to say in terms of like Rhynna's experience outside of the United States and people having this negative connotation. And it really, a lot of it comes from that movie.
I mean, when they heard they think the Bronx is burning, they took it literally.
They really did.
Yeah, and to understand that, I mean, like any other place in any other situation in any historical event, it's a lot more complex than what people make it out to be. But again, it's permissible because it is, a stereotype of people of color and low-income people. And that is not right. The Bronx, is incredibly diverse.
Exactly.
It's a huge borough.
Oh, yes.
It is not just buildings and
There are some
subways.
very wealthy neighborhoods in the Bronx.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the thing is, there is a really healthy middle class there as well. But even if there weren't, we need to really be respectful to what is so wrong with being of color and poor or low income. Why is that okay to be the butt of every single joke? And to me, I take it personally because my time in the Bronx has honestly been the best times of my life. I've learned so much from these people that, get kicked in the face every day just from being and just living somewhere. And not even beginning to talk about their complex lives or anything like that. But you just say, and people naturally don't live that way. If you say you're from another city, they're not getting that kind of negative connotation that it's already like a rock on your chest. And so why is Bronx special? Bronx is special because no matter what people throw at people from the Bronx, they succeed no matter what. People are producing in this borough and have done so and will continue to do so.
Yeah, I have to ditto what Rhynna said in terms of the Bronx. And see, I grew up in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was like, when you think of the mongoose and the cobra or the snake, that's how it was between Brooklyn and the Bronx. And I used
More so when the Dodgers were still in Brooklyn.
Well,
but that's another story.
That's a whole other story too. Yeah, I'm sure more so. But I know that when I was young, if I was going to a party and it was in the Bronx, we were like, nah, we're not going up there. But it had such a negative connotation to it, and it's not that Brooklyn didn't, but again, it's like just these two separate entities, But one of the things, I've been in the Bronx for about, I want to say close to 20 years now, and the Bronx is an amazing borough with amazing people. I still will always be Brooklyn born because that's just, that's the whole thing with Brooklyn. It just has this whole, this thing, like my wife would say, you walk around like you got a chip on your shoulder. I said, yeah, that's just the Brooklyn in me. Sorry about that. So that I always carry that with me. But I don't know what I would have done in my life if I hadn't come to the Bronx. The Bronx is where I fell in love with photography. I fell in love with not just the photography as a whole, but also with the idea of shooting diversity and showing a side of humanity that sometimes I felt wasn't being seen in the Bronx. And so, I love the Bronx.
Another show has to come to an end.
Okay.
Ryan, people want to see your work. Where should they go?
So currently I have the Papi El Maestro exhibition at the Bronx Music Heritage Center. I'm also part of the pop-up show at the Bronx Documentary Center. And then just a few weeks ago, Súbete Mujer, celebrating Women's History Month at The Point. I have a few images there as well. But you can check out my work on Instagram, Rhynna Santos.
Okay. And also all these links will be on our website.
Awesome.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I still have some images up at the pop-up show at the BDC. That is probably it right now in terms of exhibitions. But you can find me on Instagram at my street work is at MG Young Photography. And I have portrait work at Portraits by MGY.
Okay.
I didn't know about this. Yeah, and you post a lot. I mean, I'm not saying over, but you post regular, and I'm clicking all the time.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what how often you're supposed to post and not post, but just kind of like I just throw stuff.
If you
up.
ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different opinions.
Yeah. No. I'm saying you're a regular post. You got a great Instagram feed, is what I should have said. And
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Also, Everyday Bronx.
Everyday Bronx.
Yes.
Take a look at that. And
and I should point out too that to also check out Everyday Black America. I'm actually one of the curators and one of the contributing photographers.
Oh, great.
For Everyday.
And it's
under the Everyday family.
Okay. And it's BronxDocumentaryCenter.org. Is that the website?
That's right.
Okay.
BronxDoc.org.
BronxDoc.org. Okay, great. All right. Did you want to mention about an upcoming you're going to start into a project?
I'm also part of the Bronx Women's Photo Collective, and so we're beginning to do a lot of events and encouraging and supporting female photographers in the Bronx. And then hopefully, moving into new projects this year, one following Star Wars fans here in New York, starting local. And then, like every other photographer, trying to apply for grants for work that I would love to continue, like my work for Latina Muslims. And I would love to be able to continue that work and be able to photograph that more.
Food for thought. Speaking about food for thought, if you are not a subscriber to this podcast, how come? Drop what you're doing right now and head on over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, Spotify, any of them, and sign up. And you can always find us on the B&H Explorer website, as well as the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group page, which is up and running and growing like gangbusters. We have, way over 500 members already. And remember, tell them Al sent you. And for now, on behalf of Jason, John, and myself, as always, thank you so much for joining us today.